Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, Building Supplier Diversity Strategies in the Education Sector. It is right at the hour right now, so we're going to give it another minute or two to let everyone continue to join, and then we will get started. Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us today. We are here for the Building Supplier Diversity Strategies in the Education Sector. I'm Shannon Wegner with Symphony, and I will be your moderator for the event today. In the overview, I'm sure that everyone saw this when they were registering for the event, but we are going to take a closer look at the current state of procurement and how that relates to higher ed and how that is going in the higher ed industry right now. We're going to look at the elements of the supply chain and the diversity program and some of the challenges that we might face in that area today, how we can overcome those challenges and how we can leverage things like technology and data to help us overcome those challenges in today's day and age. So we have a great event planned today and some great speakers joining us as well. So I'd like to introduce who's with us today. First, we have Lisa Westgate. She is the Director of Community from TealBook. Lisa, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Westgate. I'm the Director of Customer Community at TealBook. My role is to bring community together through best practices, participation across customer industries and throughout TealBook. And my focus is to unite procurement with diversity and inclusion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. It's good to see you. We also have Derek. Derek Smith is here today with us from Huron. Derek is a Managing Director. Derek, if you want to give us a little bit about your background.
Yep. Hello, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to participate. So I'm Derek Smith. I'm with Huron. I've been with Huron for 17 years, and I lead our spend management team. So we're really focused on procurement, AP, contract lifecycle management, travel and expense, supplier management, et cetera. So really working with our clients on operational improvement, technology, selection, implementation, optimization, as well as work we do related to spend analysis and category management and strategic sourcing. So we really have many intersections with supplier diversity programs and working with our clients, really spanning all of the things from our operational assessments, technology projects, and the work we do with clients on category strategies and sourcing initiatives.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek. And finally, we have Jason Stern. Jason is here with us from Symphony. He's the CEO of Spend Intelligence. Jason, if you could give us a little bit of your background as well.
Thanks, Shannon. And thank you all for joining. So I have, I'm the CEO for Symphony Spend Intelligence. My background is over 20 years experience in procurement technologies, including CLM and spend and all kinds of areas. I'm excited here today to show you some of our how the combination of deep expertise and amazing data and our AI technology can show you how to develop a world-class diversity program. And so this is, I think, the next generation of where this is headed. And so hopefully you'll see some of that today. For those of you that don't know Symphony, we're one of the fastest growing procurement analytics companies. We might be the fastest growing. It's been a tremendous run. We've been around since 2015. We're recognized currently by Gartner and Spend Matters as a leader in our space. So at Symphony, we believe that why we provide procurement analytics, we believe in procurement with a purpose, and we believe that your CSR goals don't necessarily have to be in misalignment with your profitability goals. So by using tools like ours, we're able to show you how you can effectively fund your CSR projects with the cost savings that you can drive from the applications as well. So it's I think it's a good in today's day and age. I think it's a good approach.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, Derek. Thank you all for being here today. We have a great lineup and a lot of information to discuss. So what we're going to learn today, we're going to talk a lot about diversity in higher ed. That's the goal of our conversation, obviously. We're going to talk about what you have now, and where you can look to grow that program and develop that program. Derek's going to help lead us through the characteristics of a strong program and maybe where some of those pitfalls might be. And then Lisa and Jason are going to help us grow upon that with technology and data and how we can help and develop those programs and take that above and beyond. So to get started today, let's talk a little bit about the current state of higher ed and procurement and what's leading to this increased focus in regards to supplier diversity. It's a real hot topic. I hear about it a lot in my discovery calls when I'm talking to potential clients. But Derek, kind of kick us off. What's going on and what's leading to this increased interest in diversity, especially in higher ed?
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. I guess before I answer that, just remind everyone that October is Global Diversity Awareness Month. So I don't know if that was planned for timing of the webinar, but certainly good timing. But this awareness month's really focused on having a diverse workforce and the positive aspects of that. So, dovetailing nicely with that is focusing on your supplier diversity programs and partnering with your community and really tying into your broader diversity efforts. So to answer your question, I've been fortunate during my 17 years at Huron to work with a number of schools and observe their supplier diversity programs and really how that has evolved. I would say historically, a lot of this was based on being driven by requirements. So, this federal requirements or state requirements or university specific requirements to reach certain spend thresholds. And what's really changed over the last couple of years is I heard one of my clients use the term a renewed institutional commitment. And that's a good term for really describing what's going on. And this renewed commitment and focus driven by recent social movements. And it's not really just a focus on, now we need to better report what we're doing, because they have to. It's really about a true desire to create more opportunities for all. And along with this, many are certainly realizing that it makes good business sense to do this, to have more options, create more competition, more flexibility and agility in your supply chain, and really to benefit from more diverse perspectives and innovative solutions. So, really it's been a shift from have to want to focus on these programs.
Yeah, definitely. So as clients start to identify that they want to grow this program, that they want to invest in diversity, what are the elements that they can invest in and they can focus on in order to make sure that they're developing a strong diversity program, that they're not just checking that box, but that they're going above and beyond to have a world-class program within their organization?
Yeah, and it really needs to be several elements connected. And I think this applies whether you're starting a new program or, hey, let's restart a program, or we're just looking to make improvements to it. But really starting with those elements that are needed to set a solid foundation. So needing the aligned vision and objectives. So you really need executive commitment to this. And you need to be aligned on why are we doing this? What's important? And how do we know if we're being successful? And then defining all the program elements. So really, how is this all going to work? And then getting into more of the specifics. So what are the processes and roles? What do we expect from leadership? What's procurement's role? What do we hope for from campus buyers? What's supplier's role in this mix? It's also important when you think about roles to have the right program leader or leaders and team members that will partner effectively internally, but also that are able to partner well externally with suppliers, with your local community. And then last, really on the first row is the policy alignment. So how do we want to influence behavior through policies? Then I think about the supporting elements that are needed for success. So what are we measuring? What are these metrics? What's important to us? What are we counting? How will we measure it? How do we make this an easy process? How can we automate it to make it easy to access the data that we're using for driving the program? And then once you know what you're measuring, it's really important to know where you're starting. What's our baseline so that we can measure improvement over time. And then with technology and data, there are so many elements to this. So it's just really important to have accurate and holistic data about your suppliers and their attributes, so that happens during their initial registration. But if you're, cleaning up your supplier data, as part of your ongoing supplier management, making sure that all that is current and accurate. And then it's important for identifying suppliers for inclusion in these opportunities. We also need to think about it from an end user standpoint and make it easy to access, provide that visibility for campus when they're searching for suppliers, when they're shopping, and really try to create that ability to influence their purchasing behavior with search results and making it easy for them to find diverse suppliers.
Mhm.
And then really last on the whole technology and data piece, just the whole spend analysis and having, the accurate supplier attributes. So, going back to what I talked about, establishing the baseline and measuring progress, you really need to be able to have that data to be able to do those elements. And then on the change management and communications piece, so really think about who is our audience and what are our key program messages, and then what's the best way to reach them. That can be internal audience with procurement and campus and other stakeholders, but also suppliers and your local community. So then thinking about how do we execute on the program, and certainly focusing on having specific events and campaigns. So that could be supplier fairs, targeted campaigns and outreach. But also, I think it's important to partner with the local communities and do joint events and communications, et cetera. Then it's going a layer deeper, really, and working directly with suppliers on educational programs, doing workshops, and really providing support for them to assist these suppliers with, registration. How do they get certified with various entities to be truly considered for their classification, and just working with them on, on the basics on how to do business with the university.
Right.
The next piece really is about baking this into your procurement operation. So when you're thinking about specific categories of spend and you're determining your category strategies or planning strategic sourcing initiatives, really focus on baking this into this. This just needs to be a part of what you're thinking about, not just a one-time special initiative, but really creating these opportunities for inclusion. And then think about creative partnerships. So we've seen a number of cool things, partnering diverse suppliers with big box providers and creating a really win-win partnership for everybody. And then measuring and communicate over time. So leverage the data and, share the great results, show the improvement. And then finally, the continuous improvement mechanism. So periodically, it's just so important to look at all aspects of your program and refine it as needed. What's not working, what's working well, what do we need to tweak a little bit? What does the data tell us? What can we learn from conducting surveys, doing interviews, understanding why people are utilizing the program and why they're not, and tweak as needed.
That's awesome. And that continuous improvement is so important when you're running that program, that you're learning from what you're doing and continuing to bring that up in speed and move forward. Lisa, if you want to chime in on this as well, when TealBook looks at a program, what are they looking at from the elements of a diversity program?
Well, thank you. Actually, I think, as Derek had just pointed out, all supply diversity really begins at that foundation, which is the transparency, right? Your objectives, how it'll work, who's doing what, does it align with the policy? And all of this really needs to be ironed out right from the start. On a side note, I have not seen one time where this does not get tweaked over time. So I think, once you lay down that foundation, it's really then time to jump in and get started. The data, though, that's how you start to build and react to the diversity, to your program, right? So based on the rules of your metrics, where you are today, that's your benchmark or your baseline, and how clean is your data? And we all know the saying, garbage in is garbage out. You know, some of you might have seen at the Open, Stephanie LaPierre, who's the CEO of TealBook, she had a great quote that was up there. You know, the supplier base is the biggest untapped asset. If optimized properly, can deliver hundreds of millions of dollars in value, provided the supplier data is agile and available across systems and people. And ultimately, you have, you know, in my perspective, ultimately you have to highlight the metrics that are necessary that create those necessary internal changes, right? To roll out a new plan. And once you have that, you're going to start yelling it from the rooftops, right? Technology then comes in and allows you to execute that transparency with the data. Even before hosting a procurement event, you're going to be able to support stakeholders with a greater depth of suppliers or options, innovation. I know with TealBook, you know, searches aren't just by a keyword. You can search by specific certifications. So a specific certification type, you can look that up. You can look it up by locations within the US, by city, by state, NAICS codes, community types, or even internal categories. So when you're at that ability to start sorting by school, department, internal codes, it allows a progression of your supplier diversity program that can be tracked at that granular level, and ensuring that your change management, if they're keeping a focused eye on the most impactful spend or the most impactful categories or suppliers, you're going to start seeing some goal achievements through that.
Right, definitely. And that leads us nicely into the technology aspect. So when we're looking at technology in regards to supplier diversity, especially in the higher ed realm, how can we leverage that technology, and how can we take that technology and use that to build on what we already have once we have that foundational program established, Jason?
Yes. So, you know, it's really kind of fast and easy. I think that's the, you shouldn't be scared of how do we get to this? So I think that's the key here. So what we do is we take all the data from all the different data sources. So that's not just your AP data, because you've got spend that exists on credit cards. You've got spend that exists in expense accounts. You got spend that exists on maybe in travel systems, and you might even have multiple systems. So we bring all that together and we clean that up and normalize all the suppliers, and then we work with the technology, the data partners to enrich your data, and then we bring that all together into these dashboards, and that you'd be surprised. And then it becomes an automated process on a monthly, quarterly basis to refresh this data. And really, once it's in the dashboards, now there's certain things you can do that you wouldn't be able to do on a spreadsheet. So not only can you see, you know, your number of suppliers by diversity categories, you can start looking at them compared to the non-diverse suppliers in your spending categories or your GL categories or by your business units. And so you can start looking for where there's opportunities to improve your diversity spend. You know, to give you a good example, you might have spent a lot of time and effort to standardize or to bring on a diverse supplier for something very that is maybe a small business, and then a year later you might not have done much work with that, spent much money with that diverse supplier, and you wonder, well, what's happened? And you really don't have access to the data to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. So with this system, you'd be able to see, well, we're spending still as much as we always spent with their competitor. And we didn't, even though I did all this work to enable the supplier, we didn't make that actionable. We didn't do anything about that. So yeah, these allow you to see where that spend is going, and then you can make decisions, or you can contact those business units or those colleges to, you know, or those people, and educate them, you know, and you know, that's the kind of actionable things you can do. So we look at it as take your people from doing a lot of their time and effort in the reporting, and actually focus them on the results. You know?
Right.
I think that's what we hopefully bring to the mix here.
Right. And that's really important to higher ed, is that making sure that they're actually implementing it once they've found those specific suppliers that they want to invest in. So Derek, going back to those foundational metrics that we talked about, that we spend a lot of time kind of going through, that's going to help us create that program. But are there some areas where there might be pitfalls, or areas where it doesn't always go as planned for your partners?
Yeah, I would say, and I'll highlight a couple of things. And starting at the top, I was walking my dog early this morning and was thinking about the movie Field of Dreams. So maybe I'm dating myself a little bit, but the whole tagline and that was, if you build it, they will come.
Right.
They, in this case, being the buyers and suppliers and bringing them together. It doesn't automatically work that way. So you can have great intentions and have a well-established program, but it's so important to really target specific areas. And, as I talked about, building this into category strategies and strategic sourcing efforts to really proactively focus on this and create these opportunities. And then build some momentum with that and, share the successes because it doesn't just happen by itself. It takes work and proactive effort there to get that going. And then on the technology and data piece, as I mentioned, there's just so many elements to this, and, having enabled tools and easy access to the data that you need. And then once you have that, really utilizing the data to act on. So, if you just think about trying to do a program like this, and if you don't have data, it's just so many impacts of that, of being able to identify suppliers and being able to search and shop from them and being able to analyze, how you're doing. So it's just so important to have the enabling tools and data that can really drive the program.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. And data is one of those things that people kind of take for granted. They don't even realize what they don't have. And then once you give them kind of the tools to the chest and they see what's out there, it opens a whole new opportunity for them to dig in different areas. So Lisa, let's talk a little bit about what that can look like for our customers, for our clients.
Sure. So, when we really start with tier 1 data, right? And that's the companies that you do direct business with. And you want to be able to see their spend data by department or by category or by school, right? And this is going to be that step that allows you to maximize your goal setting. That's the what. But there's also the question of why. And Harvard Business Review wrote something up in August of 2020, and they put in there that an inclusive procurement strategy widens the pool of potential suppliers and promotes competition in the supply base, which can improve product quality and drive down cost. And by providing more sourcing options, inclusiveness can make supply chains more resilient and agile, an increasingly important advantage in these uncertain times. And, I think that was, I read that a while back, and I thought that was really important to bring up today, because I don't think that we've had more uncertain times, and how we maneuver with the businesses that we do business with today, with some sense of agility is really imperative, especially in that tier 1. But when we roll into a tier 2 program, right, this is when the suppliers report their supplier diversity spend to you. And this is where a program really can get some real depth. TealBook manages the communication and collaboration with suppliers and allows the tool to connect the spend with maximum ease for you and the suppliers, right? So meaning whatever spend you are able to manage within your own program, that's your tier 1. If you add on to that a workable program where you're requiring your suppliers to be reporting and working towards some goals, again, we're just increasing that supplier diversity, which is really neat to watch when you see it in motion. I do want to jump into the results though for time. So if we can move to the next screen and we talk about some actual results of the program. And this, we took this from a client who had a baseline over in the darker blue. So where they started at 3.1% of their overall spend, which was a diverse spend. And that's when they came in the door. So we had 2 quick wins for them by increasing their diversity spend. We simply identified right out of the gate an additional 32% of their spend was already with diverse suppliers. They just hadn't registered, they hadn't certified them that way. And we were able to locate those certifications and increase that. And then 2, by making some buying decisions And I think it was Derek that had talked a little bit about this earlier, right? If you're currently doing business with some diverse suppliers, can you move some of those purchases from one supplier to another to assist in some of that goal setting? For the longer term, we identified a significant potential of tier 2 spend. So you're going to see here that at the time I created this, I think they had a goal of about 140 million, and they were only at 32% at that point. Again, this was a brand new customer. But right out of the gate, we're starting to increase some of that diversity spend. And then finally, the increase in depth of suppliers during upcoming sourcing events. And that's going to drive that little bit also, meaning most or many companies go out to bid and they're adding in one diverse supplier. What we're finding is, or what I found over the years is, what a better practice when you're looking for the right supplier for the right circumstance. And you know, if you're looking through the lens of identifying a diverse supplier, you can certainly, you know, again, through TealBook, you can put in that certification criteria, and you're going to find yourself a nice pool of candidates for supplier relationships.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so what you're saying here, just so I understand, is that they were actually working with diverse suppliers. They just weren't even aware that they were actually diverse suppliers. So just by doing that initial analysis of the supply base, they were able to grow their diverse suppliers by 32%.
That's right. That's right. Managing spreadsheets, I've done it for years, right? Managing a spreadsheet of diverse suppliers, that's a tough thing to do.
Right. That's great. So as we continue, into the technology side, and we talk a little bit more about the tools that we can use, and we look at what Symphony can bring to the table. Jason, I want to dive back into the tools that Symphony brings and how that helps us not just report, but actually make a difference with our spend. If you could talk to us a little bit about those actionable insights and what can come from that when you're working with a tool like Symphony Spend Analytics.
Yeah, sure. So some of the KPIs that our customers look at is, you know, you look at maybe we'll just take categories like once you start breaking things down. So for example, how much of our marketing spend is going to diverse suppliers, and maybe you're understanding like maybe there's a greater opportunity because in how much of our business unit A spend going to diverse suppliers, and it could and then you can drill into that and say, well, where are these? Why is that happening? Why is it below? Why is this division or this department significantly below the other parts of the organization? Mm-hmm. What are some of those things that are going on? Other use cases and KPIs we see is you might see we think about maverick spend. So you've identified a strategic supplier. They are diverse. You've promoted them, and then you can identify all of a sudden their spend for that same item for it within the company. And how does that happen? You know, so maybe you can drill into the root cause to keep those things from happening. Or other ones is the spend stopped with the diverse supplier. Mm-hmm. So what happened? You know, they're at risk now. You know, so those are the things that you can type of the KPIs. In addition to the ones we talked about before, where you're just analyzing where's this spend that I could aggregate to diverse suppliers. And you know, so I think the combination of having the analytics. So like Lisa talked about, identifying all your potential diverse suppliers and who they are. So just getting to that level is amazing. And then layering that on top of how do I continue to identify where those opportunities are and to improve our spend with those diverse suppliers and really make those things actionable. And so that's what I think the analytics on top of that helps drive that. And having the spend that is not diverse next to the diverse spend allows that insight.
Right. And so the tools through Symphony can take that data from TealBook and help present that in a visual manner so that you can actually see those comparisons right next to each other and start making those decisions as to how you want to diversify your spend, reallocate your spend, and so on.
Yeah, you could even have category managers with KPIs around you know, what percentage of their spend is diverse.
Right. So you're really getting that to an owner, someone who's taking responsibility of that. Let's talk about some real life scenarios. Let's talk about where we've worked together and where we've actually seen this come to life in a true client environment. First, we'll have Jason. I think you have a technology implementation that you want to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, sure. So I love this story. So we first started working with Citi. I talked to the CPO, Mario, and they were he was doing a transformation project there where they wanted to implement category management and really kind of move his resources from being tactical to being more strategic in how they look at who they're spending money with and how they're doing that. And a lot of that has to do with cost savings as well. So and then we expose them to the fact that we work with data providers like TealBook to be able to enrich their data as well, and we can support supplier diversity, which was another initiative they had because California passed some recent legislation that required hospital networks of a certain size that they were required to implement a diversity program. So he was very excited that we can help him with both. And so after we finished classifying their spend, it took I think a week or two to enrich the data with the diverse spend and then provide the insights and the dashboards on top of that as well. So I think the project was hugely successful. They met their goals and their compliance goals, but now they have what I would call a best-in-class solution as well.
Right, and they can use it to continue to report out and to continue to pull those reports and information that they need for whatever compliance they have or internal projects that they're working on and whatever they need going forward.
And they're capable of going from 5% to 7%. They know how to do it.
Right, that's awesome. That's very cool. Very cool. And Lisa, I think that we have an example with TealBook as well on champion diversity.
Yeah, Mary from Virginia Tech, she had heard about us from some peers in higher education, and but it was actually her ERP rep, her Jagger rep, who really dove into some of the details. I think, I'm not sure if it was part of the implementation with our implementation with Jagger, the co-op agreement that just made purchasing it easy, but something piqued her interest. And once their IT team found us security compliant, we really kicked off a great relationship. TealBook's been able to transform the College of Engineering, helping them to build stronger relationships and opportunities within their sourcing. And since implementing it, we've been rolling out to their other schools and departments, which has been terrific. One of my favorite things that Virginia Tech does is they understand how to use the data, and they're able to increase their diversity program. And they've done this by looking at suppliers who have a certification. Now, Virginia Tech has their own requirements. They have requirements for what certification types they'll accept, but they look through our system and they're able to see if someone has a certification. And if it's not the correct one, well, they champion with this supplier in order to build a relationship and ensure that that supplier has that next echelon, I guess, of diversity certification. And what a great way to just kind of give back into the program and build from the ground up. It's one of my favorite stories.
That's cool. And they're helping build their supplier base by helping those suppliers get to the next level as well. So it's kind of like this, roundabout way of building a program while helping that diverse supplier grow as well. That's cool.
That's right.
Very nice. Well, thank you all. That is fabulous information. As we begin to wrap up and head into Q&A, I wanted to take a minute to talk a little bit about the future state. We talked a lot about what's currently happening, what has led to this increased interest in diversity within higher education and why we're hearing a lot more about it, how we're going to build these programs together, how we can leverage data and technology to support our programs to find those actionable insights and really move them forward. But what does this mean going forward? What does this mean for the future of diversity in higher ed? What does it look like a year, 2 years from now? So I just kind of want to go around the table, get some insights from our contributors today as to what they think we're going to see as we continue to move forward. So Derek, let's start with you. What do you think is coming next?
Yeah, well, this is certainly getting a lot of attention, and I think that it's important, if this is important for your institution to invest in the program and make it successful, really achieve the results you're setting out for. But I think looking forward into the future, ideally this becomes really sort of part of who we are and how we operate. And it's not just a special initiative. This is just baked in across everything and how we're thinking. And then really that continuous improvement and really being creative on how do we identify even more opportunities.
Right, that creativity is a key factor right there. It's how can we kind of think beyond where we are today and take it to that next level. Lisa, what do you see coming up? What do you think is next for diversity in higher ed?
Yeah, I think the goals are only going to increase. That's really what I'm thinking. And I think it's across industry. But I think that when it comes to, state schools, I think they're being driven by the states. State government, is what initiated much of the requirements around supplier diversity. And, and I think the private schools have really, whether it's a social drive or just the true understanding that agility and innovation begin with some of these other smaller diverse businesses, this is going up and it has no choice but to. So I think the response in the, I've been doing procurement for a long time, and I remember first hearing about supplier diversity and having no idea in the world how any supplier, any customer expected us to track this. I mean, that was really, it was almost frightening that we couldn't respond to an RFP because of this requirement. So very quickly we jumped into this, and so I remember those days, and where we are today in comparison to that is a million years away, and the drive that is pushing this is moving us very, very quickly now.
I don't think it's slowing down either. I think that it's full speed ahead. Full speed ahead.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. And Jason, what do you see as the future for Symphony when that comes into play?
I mean, I echo Derek and Lisa for sure. I kind of use the analogy of, you see what's happening with ESG through the corporate world, where it's become a requirement. It's not just to report your financial reporting. You now have to report what are you doing about ESG. And I think this falls into that same bucket. It's going to become a publicly known and aware, and your stakeholders, whether there's the the endowments and the investment in research and the student population, they're all going to be concerned. They care about what your numbers, just like Wall Street's caring right now about what the corporations are doing.
That's right.
Right. I mean, I think that those are the topics that come up over and over again as we're talking to potential clients, is ESG and supplier diversity. And it's just, 2 years ago, they were now and again topics, and now they're every conversation, and it's just going to continue to happen. So awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your contributions today. I will hop over to Q&A. We've got a couple of minutes left, and we have some audience questions that I'd like to grab, and we can kind of round table these as well. The first question we have is, what does it look like from a timeline perspective if you were to implement a program with all three partners? So I think this person is asking if they were to work with Huron, TealBook, and Symphony, what does that look like from an implementation standpoint?
So I mean, I could take that. So
yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, it's actually fairly easy from the technology standpoint. Is we come in and we're able to integrate with all your systems, and we have tools that do all that. So it's not a lot of IT involvement. So you don't have to get on their schedule and whatnot. We have minimal IT involvement. And then we work with the data provider, TealBook, to be able to enrich the data and present it in a and then and there's ways in which we can do that, either through automated, or if you already have a TealBook license, we can jump on that. We can worry about that piece later. But that whole process does not take very long. That's weeks of time. And I think, and if you're, and then, Huron can elaborate more, but I believe that they can go in and, help develop your programs and how you want to structure them, and how you're going to identify things like how you're going to manage your tier 2, what kind of reporting you're going to do. And I believe that working with TealBook and Huron, they can help kind of mature your organization as well. So if you look at it, where Symphony comes in and does all the plumbing and the data work, and enables all this, then the experts here can really kind of take you to the next level.
That's true partnership right there. Next question we have is, when you're looking at a program, what increase in diverse spend can you expect to see when you implement with a TealBook, Symphony, or Huron?
I can jump into that one. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to start with, it's a difficult question, right? I typically respond with one word, and that's up. It really depends on all of the moving pieces. And as I had discussed in a previous slide, where you're starting, and it's understanding where you're starting at the granular level, right? And then which departments are spending, what category money is being spent. And once you know that, you can drive some necessary changes from there, right? So assigning category managers with goals and understanding diversity landscapes of their categories, that's a great additional step onto this. Some categories have more diversity depth than others, right? So this allows for maybe some conscious goal setting. But it's all about that communication. It's about sharing. I'm a big fan of sharing a dashboard, right? So if you share a dashboard out and you're showing what departments or what schools are spending against goals, I think that's pretty telling. And it allows you to track that information. So I don't mean to avoid answering a set number. The problem is I don't know. I never know. This is the most common question, I think.
Right. And it depends on where the program is. Where's your
That's
program
right.
right now, and where do we think you can go? Like the example that you showed today, there was this kind of hidden nugget right away of all the spend that they already had that quickly drove their numbers up. So you never know what you're going to find.
You never know. That's right. But we do know how we're going to work towards finding more, right? And that's a tried and true program. So
yeah, you know where to look. That's the important
right.
thing.
Yeah, and Shannon, if I could add to
Yeah,
that,
of course.
I agree with everything Lisa said, and you hate to use the word "it depends," but it is a little bit complicated, and you want to be careful in what you're publishing as your goals. You don't want to set them so high that it looks like you're not being successful, even though you are, and you don't want to set them too low because, to Lisa's point, you may already be at your goal.
Right.
Once you do your baseline and have good data on those suppliers and say, oh, well, we have more spend than we thought. So, and I think the other element, and you might have multiple goals. It depends what you're including, what you're counting. So Lisa talked a little bit about the tier 1 and tier 2. So what are we doing there? And other metrics that, it ties back to what I talked about on, what's important to us, what are we measuring? So is this diversity suppliers? Is it also small business that we're counting? Not a right or wrong to any of those. It's just, really defining that up front and what's important and how do you best measure it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and this next question really feeds off of that question we just had, but and it might be it depends response as well, but what is there a realistic spend target to set as a goal? So when you start looking at those numbers, is there a realistic place to start?
I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit. So I think it's twofold. I'm not going to give an answer, and I apologize for that, but I'm going to give a wordy answer on this. Oftentimes we'll find that people come to supplier diversity through a contractual obligation. And that's a perfectly fine means to coming in the door into supplier diversity. So once you come in and you have a requirement, and maybe the requirement is 10%, 5%, 10%, whatever the number is, that's your starting place, right? So you're contractually obligated to meet that number. The hope is that through education, internal education, through a system like a TealBook, you're able to identify the ease in which you can increase your spend, that you can increase your diversity spend. And then it's just simply a matter of, somebody had talked about executive buy-in, right? You really want some executive buy-in.
Support.
You need that support, right? Because you're going to be creating a change that it's a change, and people don't like change. So if you have that executive support that's driving some goals and some initiatives, you're going to be able to incrementally increase those. Then there's going to be some big wins. Adding that tier 2, probably one of the most overlooked pieces is tier 2. You add that in, you're going to find yourself with a nice little jump in the spend. But there's lots of ways that, that again, all of us, right, are here to assist and help build those goals, find those goals, support the data, show through technology how you can get there, again, with that ease. And I think that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and I
Great.
just to not to, once you measure something, and then once you get to the baseline, then you can, it's nice to have, it's enable you program to improve on that. So, and I do know that, like, if you take a look, besides the government regs that have been coming down on the, that for a long time with contractors, that 25% of your spend has to be with small businesses. I mean, we're already seeing a lot of this is now being matriculated into, minority and female-owned businesses as well. So, that's, I think Lisa mentioned there's already, you start off there and you say, well, I have to do this, but then, it quickly grows.
Right. Right. And I think we have time for one more, and there are some other questions that we will definitely follow up with you on, to follow up with the attendees on. But last question is, when looking at growing your program, are there specific categories of spend that make for ideal starting points for this growth? Like, are there specific areas to focus on?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think there's a lot of really good categories. When you think about facilities services, so all the electrical, HVAC, plumbing, landscaping, janitorial, general repairs. Similar to that, you think about construction and all the trades people as subcontractors, great opportunities there. I've seen a lot with catering and food services. Temp labor is another good example. Commercial printing, graphic design type work, IT services. And then thinking about, the distributor type relationships, or whether that's hardware or software or commodities. I talked a little bit earlier about the big box provider relationships, and, creating a relationship there with, was a big distributor of frequently purchased commodities. I'm not going to use names, but,
You don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but partnering with a local supplier, and I don't mean just like an accounting pass through, but a local diverse supplier that was really providing great value in terms of service and order fulfillment and other values that were really appreciated by this client. And I think the whole distributor piece. So you think about where you buy your software. What distributor are you buying that from? So there's a lot of opportunities there. And I think there's so many more. I mean, those are just examples. It's back to that being creative and identifying even more categories. But even just the few I mentioned, I mean, that's quite a bit of spend that we're talking about.
Yeah, no, those are big categories. Those are big categories for a lot of people, and you can definitely start digging into them and get to those subcategory levels and really start to find those new potential suppliers.
Hey, Shannon, there's a few questions on the Q&A. I want to make sure you didn't miss those as well. A few more questions in the chat in the Zoom.
Okay, so Derek, one for you. Thank you for the expert input. When you mentioned pairing diverse suppliers with big box, is this an emphasis on tier 2 diversity? I know some big MRO firms do this well. Are you seeing this as a broader push?
Yeah, when I mentioned that, it wasn't about tier 2. That could certainly be a part of it, but it was really about tier 1 and being that distributor relationship and providing that local customer service that we've seen be of such value. It can certainly really encourage and push that with your suppliers on their tier 2 spend, which is certainly a value. But my comment there was really about tier 1.
Okay, good. This is more of an open question, but it's just the question from the attendee is, how are suppliers vetted?
I'd be happy to take that. Excuse me. I think It depends on which agency you're talking about doing the certification. And we see this really across the spectrum, right? From self-certification. So a supplier is just attesting to the fact that they are in fact a minority or a small business or whatever. And they're kind of claiming their certification through the self-certification up to, there are some agencies out there that, for a fee, you can receive a certification, but they ensure they look through the financials, they look over the business plan, they send someone out to the business to do a physical inspection. So, I've just realized, Shannon, I haven't answered any question that has been a direct question that I've been able to say yes, no, but I'm going to say it depends. And it really does depend on that certification. So
Each certification is different. True.
AH1. Yeah.
Yep. And Jason, we have one for Symphony here. It is the enrichment in Symphony occurring? So when a new supplier or suppliers change or get additional certifications, does that stay up to date within the system?
Yes. So through the integration with TealBook, we maintain that. So on it's typically quarterly that they do the refresh, but for example, all new suppliers get sent over on a monthly basis. And then on a quarterly basis, the certification is rechecked. So you're always up to date. And actually, this is a good question because often suppliers don't keep their certifications up. And so it's a good chance if you notice that they're dropped off to remind them to go recertify, because you hate to lose the spend just because they don't see it as a value and they don't understand the value that they're bringing to you.
Yeah, perfect. And that is all the questions that we have. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, I would just add to Jason's speech, since we have a minute or so on the certification. And, when I talked about workshops and support and helping suppliers, that certification piece, a lot of it is really providing that information on the how-to. We worked with a partner recently, and they were certified in a number of places, but they weren't in New York where the client was. So really, thinking about how can they easily do that?
Interesting.
It's important.
Yeah, definitely. Finding all those little niches. Well, thank you all so much for your time today. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jason. I think that we had a great discussion today around the topics of diversity, and especially when we look at higher ed. Here you can see the ways which you can reach out to us via social media. So please feel free to contact any of us if you have additional questions or if you'd like additional information. And we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Shannon.
Thank you.
Shannon, great job.